Dua by AB kind of came out of nowhere, AB standing for Augustinus Bader, but I do think the best thing for them to do was a surprise release in this way. Celebrity brands tend to face a bit of backlash, so they kind of avoided a lot of that initial chatter. We are in a saturated market. I know a lot of people feel like it's just a cash grab, but I wanted to unpack because I think Augustinus Bader actually makes good quality products, definitely overpriced, but still good quality. And the road Dua has gone down in terms of offering more accessible luxury is an interesting concept to me. Now, I will say my own initial reaction was more of excitement because I am a fan of Dua generally. I think she has a really warm and vibrant personality, or persona at least, and kind of just gives me like positive vibes, which is sometimes missing in the world. And I actually think partnering with a really reputable, long-standing brand in Augustinus Bader was quite a bold move that she didn't need to do. I think had she wanted to do just a cash grab, she probably could have gone down a much more affordable, high-profit way, using just super generic white label products, which is not what she chose to do. So this is actually offering a level of uniqueness that I think is welcome. It also means that she's able to bypass some of the growing pains associated with a lot of new brands. By using Augustinus Bader, there is obviously existing infrastructure there, both from a formulation design perspective, but also just retailing and logistics. One last thing I'll mention here in terms of like some of the lukewarm reaction that I've seen is some people were concerned that Dua was, I guess, eroding or cheapening the main Augustinus Bader line. But that simply doesn't make sense to me because there are so many skincare conglomerates out there, you know, like L'Oreal, Estee Lauder. Does anybody actually think or confuse Lancome with Aesop or Kiehl's or CeraVe just because they're all L'Oreal brands? So I don't understand why it would be a problem for AB to offer a more affordable version, like a more affordable tier within their brand as well. Now, before I get into the products, I have only been using these for a few weeks, so consider this a little bit more of a first impressions video. And of course, do let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Yeah, so anyway, let me get straight into the products. First up, I'll start with the Balancing Cream Cleanser, which comes in this tube format. When I first saw the brand launch and I was literally just scrolling on Instagram and it came up, I was actually very, very happy to see that they were going with a cream cleanser to start with, as I feel like most brands launch with gels, and gels do seem to be like the more popular format, especially for the like American market or the US market. Whereas creams probably embrace a little bit more of like a European design philosophy. So that's interesting to me, and I'm glad AB stayed within that lane because it's sort of signature of them as well. Now, this was billed as a cream to foam cleanser, which was a little bit concerning because we've seen quite a lot of cream to foam textures around. So there is a level of like this being or like jumping on a trend of textures at the moment. But the resulting lather here is actually not overly foamy. It does stay true or like remains consistent to like a really creamy feeling during the cleansing process. There is like a foamy, lathery sensation, but it doesn't take over. And this might sound kind of crazy to say, but I genuinely think this is one of the best cleansers I've used in recent years. I think they've just absolutely nailed it. It has very quickly shot up to my favorites because this brand is sort of based around maintenance and barrier care. It offers a level of hydration and moisturization with no key residue. It just cleans super well, but it's still hydrating and respecting of the barrier. There is nothing that I can say here to even suggest an improvement. I think they actually did such a good job. When I think of this cleanser, basically all of my favorite keywords come to mind. Silky, plush, creamy, low foam, smooth, cushiony, supportive. It's all of those things. And just a truly luxurious experience. It's just an absolute joy to use, and I think the product design strategy is extremely thoughtful. It's obviously based around maintaining hydration with a lot of like supporting ingredients, but they haven't forgotten the fact that a lot of users, especially since this is targeting a little bit more of a younger audience, still want a clean skin feeling. This is also able to function really well as a standalone cleanser in the evening. It takes off my sunscreen easily, and I suspect it would be fine for like light makeup as well. I'm not sure it would be able to remove heavier makeup though. And overall, it creates just a really balanced, sort of harmonious skin environment that sets everything up really well for the next products. They have stacked quite a lot of ingredients in here, which I know is sometimes a bit iffy and questionable in cleansers. There are some ingredients that do resist rinsing, so there could be a level of that going on here as well. And they do tout AB's signature TFC5, which I'll discuss in a little bit more detail later on. So there's probably a level of label claim here, but that really doesn't matter to me when the product design is so good. In terms of pricing, this is on the pricier side, but I think it sort of sits in that, Sephora Mecca territory. So definitely in the high-end market, but I don't find the price points insulting. That said, I do understand not everybody wanting to invest this amount of money in a cleanser that ultimately does rinse off. But if it's within the range of what you're comfortable spending, I think they've done it incredibly well, and I absolutely don't regret buying it. Actually, this might be a good time to mention that this video is not sponsored. AB Dua did not send this to me. I wish I just went out and bought it because I'm a fan and I was interested to see what they had. So yeah, everything I'm saying here is just my initial experience with it. Next up is the Supercharged Glow Complex, which is basically their serum release. This was probably the one product that struck me the most when I saw the lineup because it has a lot of ingredients in here that I very naturally gravitate towards. The packaging is also super interesting. I think the colors are really cool. It's like a nod to Augustinus Bader without being directly related. So the overall design of this is just, I think, again, they nailed it. But getting back to the ingredients, it's honestly almost like they creeped into my brain and created a serum that is for me exactly. We've got niacinamide and ectoin and peptides and antioxidants. It's like, if you ever watched my videos, this combination is what I talk about all of the time. The texture is also a little bit more of a milky serum, so it's a touch more substantial than more gel or watery products, but I find that it's extremely breathable. I don't really notice it on my skin once I apply it. So it's actually extremely weightless and light feeling. If you actually read the Inky list, you probably will flag some of the ingredients used more in the base that sometimes aren't recommended for acne. But I think it's really important to understand that the overall product design matters much more than any single ingredient in isolation. So although they've technically used some heavy ingredients in here, because predominantly this serum is made to be extremely lightweight, the ones that offer that little bit of extra emollients and nourishment are balanced out extremely well that I can't imagine anyone having a problem using this. Of course, every skin is different, but I'm just mentioning this because I wouldn't want people with acne who read the Inky to avoid it, because I actually think it has a lot to offer in terms of replenishing those skin types. You've sort of heard me speak about Dew Deliverance and the Naturium Multipeptide Serum, which are both milky serums, and it's a texture and lane that I enjoy. I would say this Dua serum sits in between those, so it's not quite as light as Deliverance, not quite as moisturizing as the Multipeptide Serum, so it's just a really nice in-between that I would consider to be quite a universal texture. And put simply, this is a barrier reinforcing serum with a sharp focus on preventing dehydration. It's also supported by light skin calming, like hyperpigmentation ingredients, with antioxidant and some anti-aging potential. I will discuss TFC5 soon because that is one of the signature call-out ingredients and sort of the framework of the brand overall. And I know some people sort of question the concept of TFC, but even if you put that aside and just look at this ingredient combination, this texture, the way the product has actually been designed outside of the marketing language, I can't see how anybody wouldn't see it extremely comprehensive and just really well done. Some of the other ingredient callouts include a marine bioretinol, which is phrasing that I really don't like because, of course, if I wanted a retinoid, I would use a retinoid. There are no plant extracts, including bakuchiol, that overlap. So this is not related to actual retinoic acid in any way. That is very much a marketing slant. That is kind of frustrating. But because we're used to seeing this language from bakuchiol, I guess it kind of makes sense that then other extracts will jump on that bandwagon. So I definitely don't want to imply that this is anything like retinol. But the manufacturer, if you look up this ingredient in isolation, goes on about it quite heavily, and that's what they call it in the actual supply chain. So I just have to take that with a grain of salt and run with it. The interesting thing that I didn't know about this is that the supplier actually goes to the trouble of encapsulating this extract in a liposomal delivery system. So that makes me feel there's a level of credibility here going on that isn't as common with other plant extracts, because that's a lot of effort. So maybe there is something to this. And while a marine bioretinol is certainly not a calling card or a reason that I would personally purchase this serum, considering everything else going on, it could simply be a nice to have add-on. I've already mentioned that the serum includes niacinamide, which I know is in a lot of stuff, so that's also not a big draw card for people, but the reality is it's one of the most functional skincare ingredients that, helps a lot of skin issues. So as part of a comprehensive system, it's something that I always look for and something that I want to maintain in my skincare routine. So I'm personally very happy to see niacinamide appear. And I've been discussing ectoin quite a bit, which is known as a stress protection molecule. And it's even thought to have a little bit of a sunscreen boosting effect. So I like the idea of using a serum like this in the morning. The Dua brand also touts a specific ingredient called glycerol glucoside. This is actually a beloved ingredient by one of the German powerhouses. I think it's pronounced, is it Bayersdorf? So they're behind like Nivea and La Prairie and Eucerin. And that's a little bit of a signature ingredient that they use. And the whole sort of purpose or concept behind this ingredient is that it relates to the expression of aquaporin channels in the skin, which in turn helps to improve water retention. So yeah, as you can see, this is a super well-rounded serum with a lot of focus and I think intentional thought behind the design. And another product that I've thoroughly enjoyed using and would happily continue using. In fact, I suspect it could become a long-standing favorite. And lastly is the Renewal Cream. And this comes in like a classic pump bottle mechanism. Now, of the three products, this is probably my least favorite. It is a fairly lightweight moisturizer texture, probably closer to a gel cream more than anything. And I describe it as a silky and lightweight emulsion. It has an almost like silicone-like glide to it where it's reminiscent of some primers, but it doesn't really have a slippy or synthetic feeling to it, so it's still quite pleasant to use. I would say the main reason that I didn't end up enjoying this as much is the level of moisturization it offers is quite fleeting. It has a beautiful pillowy beginning, so it feels quite nice and refreshing to use. But then after a few hours, my skin does feel a little bit more dry than I'm used to. We've had some warmer days here in Oz as we are going into summer. So on the warmer days that I've used it, it's actually been totally fine and quite welcome in that context. But for like 80 to 90% of the year where my skin reacts better to a slightly more richer texture, this is that little bit too light for me. What I get out of that is I think this product design is probably really good for general hydration and to combat dehydration. But I'm not convinced they balance like the occlusion or the occlusive properties well enough to where it actually is able to stain or lock in other hydrating properties in the skin over time. So with that said, I would mainly suggest this moisturizer to people who maybe live in humid climates where the weather is warmer, if you just happen to really like gel or gel cream moisturizers because your skin is really sensitive to thicker textures. And I also suspect that this would actually make a really nice makeup base. So if your foundation or even your sunscreen is a little bit dewier, glowier and heavier, then having something lighter like this probably allows those other products to shine. So if you're somebody that does use thicker textures after your skincare routine is completed, then something like this could actually fit in really well because it's still ultimately quite hydrating. In terms of the ingredient callouts, one of the key features here is a daisy flower extract, which is known to combat hyperpigmentation. And they've also added a more direct like expression line peptide in hexapeptide 9 that I don't think is present in the serum. The ingredients in this overall just read really nicely and again very supportive of the skin structure. The emulsion does feel beautiful to use, so it's a very pleasant and well-designed product. And I actually think I will keep this in my rotation to use on like hotter weather days. I just wouldn't say that it's maybe quite as universal as the other two products in the lineup. So that's my full like breakdown of each individual product just with my general initial thoughts. I hope it's been somewhat helpful. Now in this next little bit, I just wanted to specifically discuss TFC, which is the signature ingredient and really what made Augustinus Bader as a brand famous overall. So put simply, TFC stands for Trigger Factor Complex, and it is a composition of various ingredients in like a proprietary complex. I've already discussed how I think the Dua brand products are already really well designed even outside of TFC. So even if you don't put much stock in that, just the products by themselves are very well done regardless. And I know some people think the whole concept of TFC is a little bit of marketing jargon and does nothing. But at its core, TFC is really based around the concept of a delivery system. And that's something that I think is actually quite significant in skincare. That's not to say that I think delivery systems always justify higher price points where the main Augustinus Bader lands. but it's still not nothing, if that makes sense. So I think a few things can be true at once. Something can be marketing jargon. So the whole concept of TFC or trigger factor complex as a statement is a little bit markety, but overall a focus and product approach towards stability and a delivery system is much more than what generic or white label products can offer. So there's still a level of enhancement or originality here that is still quite interesting to me. As I said at the start, and unfortunately because TFC is a proprietary complex, the details of what it actually is are really scarce and hard to come by. And I'm pretty sure there are like 3 versions of it now. So there's the original TFC8, which comes in like your classic Bader formulas like the rich cream. Then there's Advanced TFC8, which they've started using in their newer formulations like the elixir and I think their vitamin C serum. And then in Dua, they've taken a step back a little bit and gone down the road of TFC5 instead. In my opinion, the original TFC8 is really what encompassed Bader's original skin healing philosophy. It was all about creating, maintaining, and sustaining the most optimal skin environment for repair and really being able to encourage like true skin regeneration. Essentially signaling or triggering, hence the name, the skin to be able to repair itself in the most optimal way. Now, with that said, and you might think like skin heals itself naturally anyway, so why do we need TFC? But one of the downsides of skin repair is that it sometimes happens in a way that's quite disorganized. So the skin sort of recognizes that there's been harm or there's an injury or something needs to be repaired, but it does that in a way where sometimes it leads to like an eruption or like a bump or hyperpigmentation or inflammation because it's really rushing to do the repair as quickly as it can. It's not always trying to do it the best way it can. So the whole point of the original TFC and really Bader's historic research was to try and encourage the skin to do these repair mechanisms that happen naturally, but in a way that leads to the most organized placement of skin components. So you get the most smooth skin texture, the best sort of glow, and way less inflammation as well. One of the key components that was tied to the original TFC8 was a very specific Bader exclusive peptide called oligopeptide 177. This was directly derived from Bader's original wound healing research and an EPO-derived peptide, which isn't really that common. Oligopeptide 177 sits in a class of tissue supportive, anti-stress, and barrier restoring peptides. As I've said earlier, this philosophy really makes sense to who Bader is and what the research originally was. I spoke about this in a reel that I posted recently as well, but one of the interesting shifts the brand has made, even in their own Advanced TFC8, which is in their most expensive products, is they've actually taken out oligopeptide 177, and 177 is also not used in Dua products. So I think there's a reason for this and not working for the company and not being in those meetings. I don't know why, but I suspect the reason is related to economies of scale. As the brand has grown and why they've developed a new version of TFC8 is they've shifted their focus now specifically to the delivery system itself, where they're able to then encompass other peptides while allowing for better stability. Whereas the original TFC8 had both the delivery system but also the signature peptide related to wound healing research. So those two things together were really the specialness of the Bader brand. The new focus seems to be a little bit more on lines and wrinkles potentially. And so I don't know if this was done as a cost-cutting measure because I expect more exclusive peptides are more expensive and harder to manufacture. They're probably harder to stabilize as well. They're harder to scale when the brand starts to explode. And they're also probably harder to use in various textures. So one of the things that you'll notice in that a lot of classic Bader formulations, they are a little bit more on the rich, creamier side, which tends to work better for selected peptide types. So there's potential that as the brand grew and as they wanted to target different people and different preferences, they needed to develop TFC in a way that would then work across different product types. Now, of course, this is 100% just my speculation. And I think if your focus is more so on like inflammation and redness and actual healing the skin, then the original line of Bader products is still going to be the best lane for that. Whereas both Dua and the Advanced TFC8 are kind of more about general skin concerns around anti-aging. Having said that though, in terms of Dua, I do like that although they're using TFC5 without their signature peptide, they've still rounded out that formula with a lot of other barrier support ingredients like niacinamide and ectoin. So how much not having oligopeptide 177 matters is really just going to be a case of trial and error. Now, with all of that said, and what I've been able to gather just by copy pasting different ingredients and trying to see where the overlap is, TFC at its core is really about it being a delivery system. And the significant crossover between TFC8, TFC5, and Advanced TFC8 is in a select few ingredients. So they all seem to use a hydrolyzed rice protein extract. There's maltodextrin and arginine in green tea and also vitamin E. And if you actually look up these ingredients separately and how they work within the context and structure of a peptide system, they're actually all known to somehow protect, stabilize, prevent oxidation, just protect peptide molecules to sustain their efficacy in a product for as long as possible. And so essentially they're creating like a nutrient transport system to get peptides where they need to go more efficiently. So this also seems to be why the peptide themselves, so as I mentioned with oligopeptide 177, the reason they can still use TFC in other products without that specific peptide is because they're really focused on the overall like shell or environment that's been created rather than any individual peptide in isolation. So to summarize all that, I really think the main benefit of TFC is around protection, like not necessarily of the skin, but around peptide stability. So it reduces oxidative degradation. It probably helps to prevent hydrolysis. It keeps peptides active for longer, and it also creates a topical environment that delivers these peptides in both a more protected but also more bioavailable way. So then does TFC justify the price point of Bader products? That is the question. And this is something that is impossible to answer because price points are very personal and I can't tell any one person what is worth it. Everyone has their own budget, what they're willing to stretch to. All I've tried to do here is sort of explain the theory behind the products. And I think there is definitely a fair amount of logic and reasoning behind peptide stability, because one of the downsides of cosmetic design is we don't always know how well actual ingredients are being protected, and then also how they're being encouraged to actually get into the skin the way they need to absorb maximum skin benefit. So it's not always helpful to just see an ingredient on an INCI list. Really, we're talking about the overall formula design and if it's been made to allow that ingredient to sing in its best way. And what I like about the concept of TFC is that at least AB and also Dua products by extension, they've at least attempted to create a framework to protect these molecules. The only thing I'm not sure of is how much this extends from a theoretical benefit into actually real world efficacy. And I don't think we'd ever know because these things are so hidden in cosmetics. Brands technically aren't even allowed to discuss like true skin penetration because then we're entering drug territory and they're not allowed. And so personally speaking, what I look for when I'm trying to decide, what to buy or what sounds nice to me is more so around originality and potential. I think the Dua products are actually a really solid reflection and representation of AB's philosophy. This is why they call it AB science ultimately, like Dua by AB science. But even based on their own marketing, it seems like TFC5 is a lighter version, so it's more surface active, just for general skin maintenance for lighter skincare concerns. And the Dua products hit a lot of the baseline ingredients and factors and product designs of just a healthy barrier. And so even outside of this whole TFC discussion, which I personally still find, there's potential there and quite interesting, as I've said many times throughout this video, even outside of the marketing language of that, the product design is just extremely solid. Okay, I'm going to wrap the video now because I feel like I'm starting to talk around in circles. It's always odd to discuss these topics because the truth is the cosmetic industry lives in the intersection between science and marketing. And so it's extremely difficult to navigate what's true and what's just words. So it's easy to sit around and be quite cynical, and there are many cosmetic chemists, if you speak to them, they'll just say that nothing works. Even some dermatologists are very traditional in their thinking in that cosmetic ingredients can't do anything. I'm not so sure that's true because there's just been so much invention in terms of delivery systems, and that's a lot of effort to put into something that goes nowhere. So I'm not cynical about it. I have some faith, I guess you can say, that some of these things are doing what they're supposed to. But having said that, I also don't think these ingredients are going to lead to miraculous results the way that some of the enhanced marketing might apply. So the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, where you need to use things with consistency for a while. So there's no point in investing in something like this if you're going to give up after a few weeks, because nothing meaningful can happen in that time. So yes, I hope that's been a fair and balanced breakdown of the brand and why this isn't, at least to me, it's not just a celebrity brand. I think it's actually a thoughtful evolution of product design. And as I said at the start, a way of allowing more accessible luxury. Thank you very much for watching and for hanging out with me. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.